Okay, we have started. So thank you guys for joining me this morning and giving me a chance to talk about NotebookLM, my current AI thing to just be excited about. So we are going to get started here. It is 10 o'clock, and I will drop or Vera and I are here with you. So Vera's dropped the link to the slide deck in the chat, and so join that slide, the presentation. There's some things to click on, of course, and some resources and everything, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's see, I'm going to go and share my screen with you, and let me pick the right one. There you go. So you should be seeing the screen over here. So this is AI Insights, NotebookLM for School Information Analysis. And the link is go.ncdpi.gov/NotebookLM. You can also scan the QR code and that'll bring that up. And at the very end, there will be a feedback form and then also a link to make a copy of the presentation so you can put it into your Canva if you would like to. And so we'll go ahead and get started with that. So I will go ahead and click and go ahead and get started. And I've got the link down there at the bottom. If you drop out and lose it, you can jump back in and grab that. So our agenda for this morning is to start off with some basics and just talk about what makes NotebookLM a little bit different from some of your other AIs that you might have experimented with, and why NotebookLM behaves differently, what Google feels like is what their their brainchild was behind NotebookLM, and then explore some use cases that I think are really interesting and applicable to education, and then hopefully share some ways that you are inspired to use NotebookLM and brainstorm from your point of view what you may be using it for already, or as you listen to the presentation, some things that you think, oh yeah, this might be an idea for how you could use it. So I've got this Padlet here. It is a new one. So during the summer, I know some of you were tuned into the Summer of AI webinars, and I had the Summer of AI Padlet. That one is still over there. I'm not going to delete it because it was full of some amazing ideas. So that Padlet still is living its life over there in my Padlet account. But I've got a new Wednesday AI webinar Padlet that is going to be for this round of webinars that we're doing. So if you would go ahead and jump into the Wednesday webinar Padlet and take a minute to introduce yourselves and your role, and just share some ways that you use information in your role. Do you collect information from the people you support if you're in a support role in your district or your PSU? Do you if you're in the classroom and you're collecting information, especially here at the beginning of the year, from your parents, from your students, if you're diving into your beginning of the year data, just what are some ways that you are using information? It doesn't have to be numbers, right? We collect a lot of qualitative data from people. So just if you would click a post real quick and just take a minute to introduce yourself, your role in education, and then how you're using information, just so we can kind of get ourselves in the mindset of information in our education roles. And I'm going to give us about just a minute to kind of be thinking about that. I know wait time when you're in an online format is really kind of difficult to do, but I'm going to do my best to do it. Oh yeah, I will definitely drop that link. So it's on the screen, so you should be able to click right here.
For it, Stacy.
I just dropped it in there.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay.
She's faster on the draw than me. Okay.
feel like I could be playing some kind of music in the background. Thank you, Grant. I appreciate that. Definitely staff surveys, personalizing training, personalized PD, very important. I was one of the things that we're going to get to in a couple of slides from now, once we go through the background on what is NotebookLM, is ways to use it for MTSS data. We won't get into actual MTSS data, because everything that I have would be way too specific to individual places and people. But just that that really nitty gritty information that we collect, and how to go from all of that information to something that's actually actionable. So, that information is really, really important. Definitely. Definitely stakeholder data. We have so much of that. And then how do we go take that information and move it into something that we can work with? So I appreciate you guys doing that. And so this Padlet will be open for the entire session. So if you're still thinking, you're still typing, go ahead and keep putting your thoughts in there. So I am going to go back to the slide presentation. So here we have this, and it'll pop up a couple of times as we're going through the presentation as well. And for those of you who don't know, I am Stacy Lovedahl. I am a middle school science teacher. That's where I got my start in education here in Catawba County, and went into an instructional technology facilitator role for Catawba County Schools and supported my feeder district, and had a fantastic time. And I've been an educator on loan with Digital Teaching and Learning Division, and now am the Western Digital Teaching and Learning consultant for digital for the division here. So I am excited to be talking to you about NotebookLM and how it can help us take this information that we collect in all of our educational roles and help us gain some insights into all of that data that we collect. So NotebookLM is created by Google, and it is powered by their AI, Gemini. And it's designed to help people, the kind of the brainchild behind this idea is to help people learn faster by combining all of these tasks that we've been doing in all of these different locations and putting all of it into one spot. So we have tools to help us read, right? We read in one location, we might research in another location, we might write in another location, we might take notes in another location. We have all of these different apps and tools that have been kind of siloed in different locations, and Google had this idea to put these things all in one spot in one notebook. So that's the idea behind NotebookLM. And they feel that it's different because it's designed to do the thing that AIs do best, which is create connections. So one of the things that we know about AIs is that when you put all of this information in a external AI, like ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or all of these AIs, one of the things that AIs do best is really quickly take all of that information and create connections and bring, based on our prompting, bring that information, those connections to us, right? So the idea behind NotebookLM is it uses the power of the Gemini AI and creates these connections, but it's using the sources that we add to the notebook rather than all of the sources that an external AI is using. So the big difference is that it makes these connections using the data sources that the people who add them to the notebook choose. So think of NotebookLM as a research assistant that you have personalized for yourself. It can help you summarize facts, explain complex ideas, brainstorm new connections, create products. It can do all the things that an external AI does, but instead of using all of the sources and all of the information and having to cull through all of that, it's personalized to the sources that you add to it. one of my favorite quotes that I read about at NotebookLM is that their goal is to take information and help people gain insight from that information, because they believe that it's hard to go from this inundation of information that we have available at our fingertips. We just have, we're overwhelmed with information, and educators are really busy, especially here at the beginning of the year. We're getting to know our students, we're getting to know our classrooms, we're getting to know all of the people that we're supporting, all of our stakeholders, and it's hard to go from all of that information and everything else that we have to do to insights and actionable insights, and turn that information into something that we can do with it. So when you take information in personalized sources and add that to your NotebookLM, that thing that we're doing is called source grounding. So when you upload sources to NotebookLM and you ground the language model in those sources, that process or that idea is called source grounding, and it's effectively creating a personalized AI. And you can do that in other ways, but a lot of those other ways that you're able to do that in other formats are paid ways to do it. And right now, NotebookLM and Google are allowing us to do this for free. So if you read the background information that Google makes available about this, they're not charging for this service at this time. So what kind of sources can you upload to a NotebookLM? Right now, it's pretty open. You can upload directly from your computer if you've got a computer with a hard drive, PDFs, text files, markdown files. If your NotebookLM account is connected to your Google Drive, some PSUs allow that to be connected to their Google Drive, some are not, so it depends on your Google admin. But if it's connected to Google Drive, you can also upload docs and slides. And within docs and slides, text is supported, but also images are supported. And you can also upload or paste in a website or a URL. And then you can also copy and paste directly pasted text into a source. So you have quite a variety of sources that can be added to a notebook. And we're going to look at that in just a few minutes. So there are some limitations. Right now, you can only share a notebook within your domain. So within Catawba County Schools, which is my original district, I would be able to share with my NotebookLM with anybody within my school district, but I wouldn't be able to share with somebody outside of my school district. Within my personal Gmail account, I would be able to share with anybody with another Gmail account, but I wouldn't be able to share with somebody from my Gmail account to my school district. So sharing is only enabled within your domain. Okay, you can add 50 files, 50 different sources within one notebook, and the maximum number of the size of an individual file is 500,000 words. And you can have once we get inside a notebook, I'll show you how, as you are asking questions inside your notebook, you can pin or save some of the notebook's responses as a note, and you can have 1,000 notes per notebook. One of the cautions, just like we have with all AIs right now, is to be wary of asking it to do actual calculations. It can look for answers that have numerical answers. But if you ask it to calculate, then you need to be wary of its answers. It's not a calculator. There's no version history at this time, and it is restricted to over 18, to users who are over 18. So this presentation is really aimed at us as educators, not aimed at us using it with our students. So I'm going to pause for just a second to make sure that there aren't any questions in the chat, or if you do have questions, to give you a chance to ask before we go on to the next thing. Are we good? And feel free to type an answer or type a question, or you can unmute. We're a small group here, so I don't want to. Feel free to ask if you have any questions, or put up the little hand raise sign. Okay, I'm gonna go on. Okay, so privacy. Before we go into this next part of actually experimenting with and jumping into an actual tour of NotebookLM and some of these use cases, since we're talking about information, like using it for school improvement, and I mentioned MTSS, we're talking about our actual students and stakeholders and using this with data. We need to really talk about and be aware of privacy, right? So you can click on the direct link over to the NotebookLM privacy and policies page and read that. But in a quick little summary is your personal data is not used to train the NotebookLM AI. So your personal and private sensitive information is in your sources is not used in any way that is different than if you were uploading or storing your information in in Google Drive or any other online Google product. So you would take the same precautions that you would take when storing student data in any other online source or location, like Google Drive or Google Sheets or Google Docs. So with that being said, you would want to take care in sharing this information anyplace else. So, but I've got the link there, so you would work with your district and with your PSU to make sure that it meets your privacy policies. Okay, so with that being said, let's go over to NotebookLM and take a look around and take a quick tour and do some exploring to see what the actual nuts and bolts of this site look like. So on 11, I've got the link there. So you can click on this link to notebooklm.google. And in the upper right-hand corner, when you get to that site, there'll be a button that says Try NotebookLM, and that'll take you over to the site itself. So I am going to do that. And it's going to take me over there. This is what the page looks like. Gives you this cute little animation to give you a little explanation of what it looks like. And you've got Try NotebookLM. Is it working for everybody? So it is enabled by your district admin. So if you can't get in through your district, you could open up a tab to your personal Gmail and possibly get in that way if it's blocked in your district. So if you get into Try NotebookLM, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. Now, you won't have all of these little squares right here because you haven't created and been playing around with NotebookLM a lot at this point, but you'll have a new notebook square up here in the upper right-hand corner or upper left-hand corner, and then all the way down at the bottom, you'll have a few example notebooks. So you'll have Introduction to NotebookLM. That has a lot of great background information in it. So a lot of the information about how to use it, some use cases, some of the limitations. There are a lot of notes in there that you can read through to get a lot more detail about NotebookLM. Is super helpful. And then you've got a couple of notebooks as examples of use cases to help you get an idea of how NotebookLM can be used. So we're going to look at a couple of those in just a sec. So let me go back over here. So we have new notebook introduction, and then we're going to talk about some of these, and we're going to actually explore the invention of the light bulb one and see how that one looks. Okay, so let me go back over here to my notebook. Okay, so if you would go down to invention of the light bulb and open up this notebook. So once you're inside a NotebookLM, right, I want to give you a quick little tour of kind of what one looks like. To get back to like the main blank screen, you would just click on the upper left-hand corner where it says NotebookLM, and that'll bring you back to the main screen. Took me a long time to figure that out. Don't know why, but I think that's important. How do you get back to the beginning, right? So I'm going to open that back up to get back over here to my notebook so we can look around. Over here on the left, are all of the sources. So you can see that this notebook already contains a source for incandescent light bulb history directly from Wikipedia. It contains Joseph Swan's bio, also from Wikipedia. So as you hover over each of the notes, it opens up and gives you a little explanation of what that note is and where they got it from. And this little checkbox shows you that they've all been selected. You can uncheck them to turn them off, right? Over here in the center of the screen are some notes that have been saved. So when you ask your notebook some questions down here in the prompt box, you can just have a conversation and just get information like you would with any AI, right? And just be reading and interacting and, finding and just having a conversation with it. But if you get a response that you want to save, then you can pin that response as a note and it'll pop itself up here as a saved response. If you don't save your responses, when you close your notebook, it'll wipe the slate clean and that chat will disappear. So any chats that you have are literally like a conversation in time. They're ephemeral and they go away unless you save the chat and pin it as a note. So when I said back on one of those previous slides that you get 1,000 notes per notebook, that refers to these notes right here in the center. You can have 1,000 of these pinned up here. 1,000 is quite a bit to wade through. So this is your chat box down here. And then over here is something called a notebook guide. And we click on that. It gives you some suggested ideas of things you can do with your notes. So let's look at some things that you can do with your sources once you've got them uploaded. So we have this little source here, the incandescent light bulb history. So if I click on that source, it'll open up what the source looks like once you upload it. So if you upload a PDF that has a lot of really pretty formatting, maybe it's got some tables and some charts and some graphics, it will extract all of that information out and turn it into text. So you can see that anything that you upload turns itself into a very basic text file. So here's what was uploaded from Wikipedia. Up here at the top, it will show you a summary of it, and then it summarizes the key topics over here on the right-hand side. So immediately you can see you get some information from the AI about the source itself. You can see the original source information, so you can just read it directly, and then you can see the summary. And then over here on the right-hand side, down below, you can see that because now you've selected that source, it's got a little checkbox beside it, and you've selected it. Over here on the above the chat box, you can see some suggested questions have showed up that you can ask the AI. So it'll start suggesting just based on that one source that you've selected. So one of the things to remember is you can turn on or turn off as many of your sources at a time. So you can just ask questions about one source, or you can turn on as many of the sources as you want at a time. You can unselect them or deselect them and analyze just one, or you can start combining them in different ways. So you have a lot of control over how you're analyzing your information. So over here, since I've got just one source selected and it's starting to prompt me for questions that I might want to ask, or I can start typing my own questions. So what types of questions would you think of asking over here? So we've got explain the significance of Springle pump in the development of the incandescent light bulb. So I could just go with the suggestions that the AI asks me to ask. Is suggesting that I ask. So it thinks for a second and it's going to come up with something. So it's starting to explain it. So you can see if you're researching something, it's going to start, kind of get you over that, what do I do about a blank page, right? So it's going to start delving into use the word delve in AI. Sorry about that. Anyways, it's going to start prompting you with some information to get you into your document and get your thoughts going. So if you're thinking in an educational context and you're confronted with this big piece of text, this big piece of information, you can upload it to your AI and it's going to start getting you into and start getting you to think about what that data source is about and get you to start thinking about it in different ways. If you liked that this note and you think that it's insightful and it's something that you want to save, then you can click on it over here and you can save it, and it'll let you pin that as a note. Okay, let's go over here and look at adding your own source. So I think since this is I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to the beginning and let's look at a new notebook and start from scratch. So if I'm going to start from scratch with a new notebook, I'm going to open that up. And this is what a brand new notebook looks like to upload sources. And you can see it's really, really easy to do. The interface is really simple. You can choose a file that'll take you over to your hard drive and you can pick your files directly from your hard drive. If you're connected to your Google Drive, you click on Docs or Slides, and that'll take you to your Google Drive, and that'll let you upload. If that's been enabled by your administrator, you can click a link, and it'll take you, and you just paste in your website, and that'll let you paste in your website. And if you click Copied Text, that'll open up a text box, and you can copy in your text or paste in your text. So adding your sources is really easy to do. So I'm going to pause really quick and see if there are any other questions. Are we good? Okay, so back to the slide deck. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is a couple of use cases that I thought would be really interesting for an educational point of view. And the first one, since we've recently had released the teacher working conditions survey, so from a and all of that information and what could we look at it and how could we use it. So if I'm over here and I'm looking at a example of some teacher working conditions data, right? So here's an example notebook. And I have two example high schools and two example middle schools. And I went and I downloaded the data and anonymized it a little bit and pasted in the text. So pasted in text would look like this. You've got a lot of information, right, on leadership, on all of the information that you get from the state, the individual schools, and how do you go from a lot of information to insights, from information to insight. And if I deselect everything and just pick the two high schools, you can see that it starts prompting me for some questions. How does school leadership at example high school, which is example high school 1, ensure that teachers receive coaching and support to implement new practices? How does example high school communicate vision to its students? How does example high school use data to organize, plan, and set goals for student learning? So right away, it's starting to prompt me with some questions that I could ask it. So the first thing I could say is just compare the two schools. So those questions that it was suggesting were very, very specific, but what if I just want an overall two comparison? And one of the things that I think is we know our school districts really, really well, but we also come with a lot of assumptions sometimes. So what would the data tell us? So we could go ahead and just compare the two schools, right? So then we could start digging into some things that are really, really specific about that. So we could say, if we look at the two things specifically, maybe that information would tell us that there are some specific things in there that we would want to dig into. So we would see here that it gives us specific examples in there of citations where we could go and say, where does that where do these conclusions specifically come from? So it goes to the exact spots in our data that support its conclusions. So if we had the actual data and the actual schools and the actual pieces of information, we could dig into the specifics of where it's making those conclusions. Then if we wanted to if we had all of our schools in here uploaded, we could select all of them and make comparisons across all of our schools. Maybe we could take a subset of just the middle schools, just the elementary schools, just the schools in a certain feeder. We could take all of that information and really quickly, with just a couple of clicks of the buttons. And then you can see, since this is a notebook that I actually created myself rather than the generic one that we were looking at originally, I have the option to pin things, and that creates a new saved note, so I can put those notes up here if those are things that I want to save. And then once I have things that I want to save, I have the option to keep these things. And for things that I want, I can either I can export the notes, I can copy them into documents, I can combine notes. So suppose you hit your 1,000 note limit and you want to start combining things, you can take several notes and put them together and then export them to save them and put them into something else. You can take several notes and say, make this into a presentation. It'll create products for you, things like that. So I'm going to pause right here, and I promised that I would give us a chance to add some input. So if we could go over to the Wednesday webinar Padlet for just a sec, and based on the teacher working conditions use case, are there other ways that you could see using a big data source like that and asking a personal AI questions that have come to mind? And if you have some ideas, um, add them to the what did you notice about NotebookLM or the Q&A brainstorm column. Or if it's easier to just type them in the chat, that's okay too. Okay, so I am going to go on to the next example, which is a 5th grade pacing guide. So one of the things that we update a lot over the summer are pacing guides and getting them into alignment. I know that we have new science standards, so there's been a lot of work around science standards over the summer, and I was looking at our reading pacing guides and, oh, wait, let me press pause. So there's a comment in the chat. Thank you, Drew. I would like to see this as initial skimming, surface level of trends and commonalities, differences before digging in deeper. So can you tell me more about what you're thinking about as far as that goes? I can definitely understand that. So Drew says, using the AI with the teacher working conditions survey or other large data sets to just get some descriptors or descriptive frequencies, definitely. And I think that's a really good point. And the more you start digging into, like with your specific, the questions that you start with, right? And then seeing what it starts to come back with and going from there. It's one of those things where with every time I use an AI with what I start off with and what my questions are, and then it becomes like a conversation where it takes off from there and you go in a lot of directions. Sometimes they're the direction that you think you're going to start off in, but then they also start to take some tangents that go off in other directions based on the answers. And Magic School from the teacher side has a lot of capabilities too. And I think, but also limitations in that you are in less control over the guardrails that Magic School puts in place, right? Whereas being a commercial AI, it has less of those education guardrails in place with Gemini, and and it would be interesting to see how the two compare, right? It would be interesting. And then there's a question in the comment in the Padlet about what would be the argument for having Gemini or having NotebookLM enabled in a district. And it might be a question of just awareness because NotebookLM is really recent, right? It's been available for less than a year, and in the beginning was very beta. It's still beta, but it was very an emerging capability. And with anything that is new, had some quirks to it and some inaccuracies, and has definitely been improving. So it might be a conversation and just showing the uses for it, and if you're using it on your personal side and showing how useful it can be to be this personalized, using of sources and having this educator use. And it's definitely something that is not something that we're advocating or saying because it's 18 and over. It's something for educators to be using for data analysis and information analysis, and trying to get insights into the information for using with our workflow. You're welcome, Grant. Okay, so here's another example of something that would be, I think, just a really good workflow for the classroom instruction side of things. And the example that I wanted to show you a little bit about was combining a newly revised or even an existing pacing guide with your standards with either depth of knowledge or Bloom's taxonomy. So this is an example of a 5th grade reading pacing guide that as the source. So if we click on that, you can see that the pacing guide was in a really nicely, well, you can't see the really nicely formatted pacing guide, but it had all the things, right? It was in a table, it had all of the different pieces of information, it had references out to all of the standards so you could see exactly where you needed to go. And when I uploaded that PDF, it deleted all of that formatting and broke it down into, just the information. So as you scroll through it now, it's probably making you dizzy. I'll go a little bit slower. So as you scroll through it now, it has standards, the question stems, just the facts, right? All of that pretty stuff that we humans need to read something, gone, right? And then here's the nice summary up here at the top. So if you needed to look at that, you've got it. So let me close out, and I'm going to deselect everything and just turn on the 5th grade pacing guide. So if you just wanted to analyze your pacing guide, it would be great. You could just ask it questions for your school district, and that in and of itself would be, just a really good use for it. You could just query your pacing guide and, and that would be helpful, I think, just by itself. But to the second step would be to cross-reference it with your actual standards. So you've got your pacing guide, but let's put a PDF side by side with your standards. So let's upload those two. So if you click on standards, this is directly from the DPI site with the standards with clarifications, uploaded that, and you can see similarly, it took the standards and pulled out any of the formatting, and you can just go through and search those. So now we've got our standards in our personalized AI, right? So now we can cross-reference those and we can compare our pacing guide to our standards and get additional information and clarifications based on that. But then I know in our district, we are really concerned about blooms and rigor and scaffolding and making sure we're moving kids and all of that sort of thing. And there are a lot of references in this pacing guide to question stems and depth of knowledge and all of that. So maybe I want to make sure that I've got all of that aligned. And as an instructional coach, maybe I've got questions about that. So we could upload, but when I asked it questions, when I just had the pacing guide and the standards in there, and I asked it questions, it was really interesting because it made some assumptions about blooms, but it was really clear. There's a note in here that says, it made some assumptions and some inferences about Bloom's taxonomy, but down below it said there's nothing in the sources that specifically defines what Bloom's taxonomy is. So what I loved about that was that the AI was clear that it was not going outside of its sources to find information. So that's really important to remember, is that it's not using an external AI for information. It's only using the sources that you provided, right? So what I did was went to this source and found a high quality source for Bloom's taxonomy, and I uploaded information to my personal AI to give my AI the information I needed it to have. So I added a source for revised blooms, and then I asked it additional information to get it to add additional suggestions, additional resources, additional information about differentiating instruction for rigor. So I think that if you're kind of extrapolating that to all of your pacing guides and all of your subjects, you could say if you're updating your pacing guides or your instruction and making sure you don't have holes in certain areas, or maybe you've got grade levels that need to go either a little bit above or scaffold up in certain areas, you could really quickly ask your AI, ask your NotebookLM where those things exist. Definitely could. Okay, so I'm going to pause right here because I see some things going on in the chat, or jump over here to the Wednesday webinar Padlet, and just make sure that I give people a chance to share their ideas on how this might be used in as far as standards and pacing guides, our new standards that have just come out, the things that we're working on, updating this current in this current cycle. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next example, jumping over here. Okay. Now, this one I didn't have an actual data set for because everything that I had was really granular. It had, our, meeting notes and nothing that could really be sanitized to put up on the screen. But I wanted to talk about MTSS. If a district is having, if a school is having progress monitoring meetings, MTSS meetings, PLC meetings, grade level meetings, throughout the year and just doing the really, face-to-face work that we're doing about kids and making sure that everybody is moving along exactly the way our students are needing us to be talking about how things are going on a real timely basis, then we are collecting a lot of really good information on how kids are doing when they're working with all of these different these different reports that were in tests and practice projects that they're doing. And so when you think about just the volume of information and the volume of conversations that we're having about students and where that information is going, right? And it's face-to-face conversations between teachers, it's notes that we're collecting, it's just an incredible amount of information. And we could put that in, we've got that information in Google Documents and sometimes in Google Sheets. We've got a lot of information. And I think it is the epitome of going from information to insight, right? So this idea of making MTSS progress monitoring meetings available from months of data to months and years of meeting notes to something that could be an actionable insight. So if you were to capture those meeting notes and anonymize them in a way that you felt comfortable with, and then share them with your grade level meetings and put them into notebooks, you could ask them questions about students in a way that could give you insights into how effective interventions are, how effective certain students are moving or not moving. hmm So if you're checking in looking at the chat, there's just looking at some of the Google Drive data that I've been looking at for the schools that I support. There is just a wealth of information, but because it's so much and we are having to move from grade level to grade level, there's it's the perfect information to put into a Google Notebook and then be able to ask it questions. It's exactly what AI is good at, is making those connections. So I wanted to jump over to, I think before we close the chat, I'm gonna grab the chat and put a lot of the comments over in the Wakelet so we can capture them and make sure that they don't go away once we close out the webinar, because your comments um, are really are perfect for what we want to for some uses of NotebookLM, and some of the perfect ways to take all of the information that we collect on a very school basis, grade level basis, team basis in middle school, and help us take all of that information that teachers are collecting and make it faster and easier to take that information and turn it into something that can be used and not take so much time to, and is exactly what AI is intended to be able to do. So comment in the chat, can this create lessons based on new standards? Yes, it can create products, definitely. So you could put your standards in, you could go from your pacing guide and give it prompt it the way you would any AI, as long as you give it the source information and give it a prompt, it can do that. Yeah, it can create products. Definitely. And if you gave it the source information for the template or the background information as a source, and you can upload that info the background and the examples, then it can definitely do it. Hmm. So it would not accept a spreadsheet file because that's not the file type that it would accept, but you can upload a text file. But remember, it's not going to calculate. It can give you back the numbers, but it's not going to calculate for you. So the question, just to read back, is how is it with spreadsheet data? So you would have to convert the spreadsheet to a text file or a PDF, something that the file type that it can handle, and then ask it about the spreadsheet, or about the spreadsheet data, but don't ask it to calculate because it's not a calculator. Yeah, yeah. So more for insight, and in another example for the teacher working conditions information, that was all numbers. So it's gonna say, what I can ask it what to compare the different schools from year to year or school to school, but I couldn't ask it how much larger was this from that because that would be asking it to do a calculation, and it wouldn't be good at that. Mm, trends. Trends would be calculating. Yeah. I mean, you could try, but I would double check it. And it could be that it's not reliable now, and it might improve as they work on it. So one of the areas that I always share at the end of a webinar is a place to go for more resources. And I have two places. The main Wakelet, well, actually I have three. I should put the other link up here. We have three places for resources. The Thank you very much for joining. I appreciate it a lot. So the AI website, the DPI website for AI resources is your one-stop shopping location for all things related to AI and DPI. And that's where you found the webinar links and the AI guidance link and all of that. So that is your main location. And then I've been also collecting resources for the official AI information from the AI website for DPI, but then all other things that I come across on other locations in my AI for Education Wakelet. So that link is here. And then I've started, it's a resource Wakelet for NotebookLM, which is located here. It's a little bit thin on information right now, but I'm planning to add to it as I find more resources related to NotebookLM. And what I really want to collect is some use cases for how we're using NotebookLM in education. So this is just starting, but I'm starting to try to get some more information to put in there. This use of AI is really focused on educators, right? So when you're thinking about education, our use in our education role of AI. It is ask how AI can create this for me. So all of those questions of can it create lesson plans if I upload edu protocols? Those are, or can AI create this for me? This is that top level of, how can I get AI to save me time? So yes, right? And then, once I've got that time saved, what am I going to do with it? And then it moves me down here to, students and everything. And then how can I work with AI to do this? And the idea is that we are not outsourcing our thinking. We are outsourcing our doing so we can spend more time thinking about all of those things that humans do, right? So, and these are two of my favorite things from Dan Fitzpatrick, and have kind of carried them around with me for the last year or so. So thank you very much for joining this webinar this morning. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to hear about what you do with NotebookLM. Make sure you click the feedback form and fill that out. It will send you your CEUs, and have a great rest of your morning.